She carried him a glass she knew he shouldn't drink, and she wasn't the one who filled it. My loves, I have served men like this. 48 floors up, where the lights look like money and the wind hums in the brass. Charlotte Rivera is 25. A black woman, a waitress in the reserved section of a rooftop restaurant, working her second double of the week with a daycare bill folded in her apron. 2 words stamped in red. Final notice. At 11:52, the room changed temperature. Kang Jun-ho. They call him the Quiet One. Charcoal suit, black silk shirt, a steel watch that costs more than her year. The manager ran to the door. 3 men stopped eating. She served him without her hands shaking. And when he turned his head, she saw it. A black serpent inked up the right side of his neck, one small red eye resting under his ear. She didn't know his name yet. Then she went to the service corridor for ice, and she heard 2 voices she wasn't meant to hear. Aigu. She had 90 seconds to decide what kind of woman she was. Stay with me, because what she whispered at that table cost her everything she was trying to protect. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and click join to become a member and help our channel. Charlotte Rivera balanced 11 glasses on a tray built for 8 and crossed the reserved section without spilling a drop. 48 floors up, the glass wall on her left held all of Manhattan, and she had stopped seeing it sometime around her 4th month. What she saw was table 9, where a man in a tuxedo had lifted his water and set it down again 3 times without drinking, which meant he wanted something and had decided to make her guess. She reached him before he raised his hand. Another sparkling for you, sir, and the lime this time, not lemon. He blinked. He had wanted exactly that and had not said it. Charlotte moved on before he could enjoy being read. 11:40 at night. The dinner service should have ended at 11. The rooftop's reserved section stayed open when the house said it stayed open, and tonight the house had said it. So 22 people were still eating in a room designed to look like money, apologizing for itself. Low amber light, black stone floors, a ceiling of thin brass rods that hummed faintly when the wind came off the river. Charlotte had worked 6 shifts in 5 days. This was the second double. In the front pocket of her half apron, folded twice under the white service cloth, was a piece of paper she had read 4 times that morning and had not read since. The daycare had sent it in a window envelope, which was how she knew before opening it. 2 words stamped in red at the top, at an angle, as if someone had been in a hurry to be cruel. Final notice, $840. Payment due Monday, or care would be suspended for Micah Rivera, age 5, and Nia Rose Rivera, age 3. She had folded it into the apron, because leaving it at home meant Loretta might see it while putting the children to bed. Loretta would have offered. Loretta had $400 in the world and would have offered all of it. So the paper rode Charlotte's hip all night, through 11 glasses and a tuxedo who wanted lime. She had done the math on the train that morning, twice, using the Notes app, and both times it came out the same. Rent went out on the 1st. The utilities had already been moved to the 15th by a phone call in which she had used the word please more than she liked. If she picked up the Sunday brunch and the Tuesday private event, she landed at $710 by Monday. $710 was not $840. She had a plan for the difference, and the plan was tips, which is another way of saying she had a plan built entirely out of other people's moods. At the service station, she keyed in the water, wiped her hands, and checked her phone for 2 seconds. No message. She typed with her thumb, low against her thigh where the cameras cared less. They asleep yet? The reply came before she pocketed it. Loretta always answered fast. Nia Rose fought me. Micah out cold since 9. Don't rush, baby. We fine. Charlotte breathed out through her nose and put the phone away. And that was when Douglas Pruitt came around the corner of the station, with a highball glass held up between two fingers like evidence. Rivera. He said her name the way other men said a diagnosis. 56 years old, thick through the neck, sweating at the hairline even in a room kept at 68 degrees. His wine-colored tie had been pulled loose 2 hours ago and had stayed that way. The house key ring on his belt clicked whenever he shifted his weight, and he shifted his weight constantly, so the man arrived with sound. He turned the glass in the amber light. "Look at it." Charlotte looked at it. "I said look." "I'm looking, Mr. Pruitt." He rotated it another quarter turn until the light caught what he wanted her to see. A print. One thumb, at the base, below the level where any mouth would ever touch. "That's yours." "It might be." "It's yours." He was already louder than the room. 2 tables had turned their heads, and Pruitt felt them turn, and grew. "Do you know what these people pay to sit here? Do you have any idea?" A man flies in from Seoul and I hand him a glass with a maid's fingerprint on it. The word landed in the middle of the room and stayed there. Charlotte kept her hands at her sides. She had learned, at some point in the last 2 years, that the hands were the tell. Not the face she could hold, but the hands wanted to move, wanted to fold the apron, wanted to touch the brass name tag over her left chest that said Charlotte in 6 small stamped letters, and if they moved, he would know he had gotten in. Her hands stayed down. "I'll polish it again." "You'll do the whole tray again." He set the highball down on her station, hard enough that the base sang. "Every glass on that table. Pull them, walk them back, repolish, reset, in front of them. There are 14 glasses on that table, sir." "Then you'd better start." He waited. That was the part he wanted. Not the tray, the pause where she'd argue, so he could say no in front of an audience. Charlotte picked up the tray. She crossed the floor with it empty, and every step took her past people who had heard. That was the design of it. Pruitt could have sent her behind the wall. He sent her across the room instead, and she collected 14 glasses from a table of 6, while a woman in green watched her hands, and a man beside her studied the ceiling with sudden interest, and nobody said anything, and the tray got heavier with each one, because of course it did. At the 4th glass, the man beside the woman in green cleared his throat and said, "Really? It's fine." To nobody. He said it toward the table, not toward Pruitt, and it cost him nothing, and it changed nothing, and he went back to the ceiling. Charlotte took the 9th glass out of a woman's hand, while the woman was still drinking from it. That one had been Pruitt's instruction, and it was the only moment her jaw moved. "I'm sorry," she said. "It's not you," the woman said. "No, ma'am." She carried it back. She polished each glass under the station lamp with the folded white cloth, held it to the light the way she'd been taught in a training video that cost the company nothing, and set it in a row. 14. She counted them twice because she was not going to give him a 15th trip. Then she carried them back out and set them, one at a time, right hand only, no tray rattle, and the woman in green said, "Thank you, sweetheart," in a voice pitched to make herself feel better, and Charlotte said, "Of course," and meant nothing by it. Behind her, Pruitt had already moved on to shouting at a busser about ice. Charlotte checked the wall clock by the service door. 11:48. The last bus that connected to her line left the corner of 52nd at 12:30. Miss it. And the next option was a car she could not pay for, or 90 minutes of waiting in a bus shelter with a broken panel, and either way Loretta would sleep in the armchair with the television on, and her back would hurt for 3 days and she would say nothing about it. 40 minutes, then, if the floor closed clean. 42, if she ran the checkout fast. She had it planned. She had every night planned, down to the block, 2 blocks to the corner. 4 minutes if the light at 53rd cooperated, 6 if it did not, and she had learned to leave the building through the loading side because the front revolving doors added 90 seconds and a doorman who liked to talk. On the bus, she would eat the roll she had put in her locker at 6. At home, she would lift Nia Rose off the couch without waking her, which required going in under the knees first, and Loretta would say the same 3 sentences she said every night, and Charlotte would say thank you and mean it more than she could carry. 40 minutes. She squared the cloth into the apron pocket and reached for the water pitcher. Then the room changed temperature. There was no announcement. Nobody looked toward the entrance first. That came a half-second later. What happened first was that the sound level dropped, the way it drops in a house when a door opens somewhere far away and the pressure shifts before you hear it. Charlotte's head came up. A man had come through the double doors from the elevator lobby, and a charcoal wool overcoat was folded over his arm, and he was walking into the reserved section like a man returning to a room he had left 5 minutes earlier. Tall, wide through the shoulders, and narrow everywhere else, he wore a 3-piece suit in matte wool the color of wet slate, the jacket hanging open, and under it, a black silk shirt with no tie and the collar left open by exactly 1 button. He moved without hurry. Nothing about him took up more space than it needed. Douglas Pruitt stopped mid-sentence with the busser and went to the doors at a speed Charlotte had never seen him produce. He arrived bowing, not a nod, a bow, from the waist, badly executed, the key ring swinging out from his belt and clacking against his hip. His hands were doing something in front of his body that had no name. Sir, your table is ready. We've held it all evening. The man in the charcoal suit handed him the overcoat without breaking stride, the way you hand something to a coat rack. At the tables, 3 men stopped eating. Charlotte saw it happen from the station, and it was the detail that stayed with her later, not the bow, the eating. 3 separate men at 3 separate tables, none of them looking at each other, all of them setting down their forks within the same second, and then not picking them up again. One of them touched his wife's wrist under the table. Another turned his chair 1 degree, so his back was no longer square to the room. They knew who had come in. Nobody had said a name. The man crossed to the corner table by the glass, the one Pruitt kept empty on nights the house told him to keep it empty, the one with a view of the door and a wall behind it, and he did not sit until he had looked once at the entrance he'd come through. Then he sat, and only then did the second man come in. That one was older, 50-something, soft-built, with a rounded belly under a navy pinstripe suit and a red silk tie held down by a gold clip. Silver black hair combed back and lacquered flat, gold-framed glasses, small warm eyes behind them, a jade ring on his right hand catching light as he waved off the busser. He smiled at everyone. He smiled at the busser, at Pruitt, at a couple at table 4 who had not looked at him. He arrived like an uncle at a wedding. He took the seat opposite. Neither of them shook hands. Pruitt came at Charlotte sideways, still holding the overcoat like it might bite. Corner table, you. Sonia has that section tonight. I said you. He had dropped his volume for the first time all night, which frightened her more than the shouting had. Sonia's shaking. Look at her hands. Charlotte looked. Sonia had backed against the station wall with a bottle of still water held to her chest in both arms, and she was breathing in a way that would spill it. They don't like nervous, Pruitt said. Nervous is an insult to them. You understand? You go. Water, no ice, 2 glasses. Whiskey for the one on the left. From the reserve. The bottle at the back with no label. Don't ask them what they want. Don't recommend anything. Don't stand there. How long will they be? Until they leave. He wiped his hairline with the back of his wrist. Rivera, don't look at his neck. She turned her head. What? But Pruitt had already gone, carrying the coat toward the cloakroom with both arms, holding it out slightly from his body. Sonia caught Charlotte's sleeve on the way past the station. Her fingers were cold through the fabric. Charlotte, it's a table. My cousin works the lounge at the Vessel Place downtown. Sonia's voice had gone down to almost nothing. 2 years ago, a man like that came in, and a server dropped a spoon, and she never came back to work. Not fired. Never came back. That's a story. Charlotte. It's a table, Charlotte said again, and took the pitcher. Charlotte laid the tray. 2 glasses, no ice. The unlabeled bottle from the back of the reserve shelf, heavier than it looked. The glass so dark it read black under the amber light. A folded napkin. Nothing else, because nothing else had been asked for. Then she crossed the floor for the 3rd time that night. Halfway there she made a decision, and she made it fast, the way she made most of them. Whatever these men were, whatever the room had done when the doors opened, she had $840 stamped in red riding on her hip, and a bus at 12:30, and 2 children asleep in an apartment in Inwood. She was going to pour water and pour whiskey and walk away. She would not perform anything for anyone tonight. The 2 men were speaking Korean when she arrived. Low, unhurried, the older one doing most of it, hands open on the tablecloth, jade ring turning slowly. The younger one listened with his chin very slightly down. Charlotte set the tray on the stand and worked from the right. Water first, both glasses, poured from a height that made no sound. The older man tipped his head to her and said something warm in Korean that she did not understand, and answered with a small nod, because a nod is a language. Then the whiskey. She lifted the dark bottle, broke the seal of the pour with her wrist and not her shoulder, and set 2 fingers of it into the glass in front of the younger man. Her hand was steady. It had been steady through 14 repolished glasses in front of a room, and it stayed steady here, and she watched the liquid come to rest without a ripple against the side of the glass. She was setting the bottle down when he turned his head to the left, toward the older man, to answer something. And Charlotte saw the tattoo. It came up out of the open collar of the black shirt on the right side of his neck. A tail, first, black ink, thin as a wire, and then the body of it thickening as it coiled up the tendon, scale by scale, drawn by somebody with time and talent. The head rested just under his ear. It was in profile, and the eye had been inked in red. One small red eye, the only color anywhere on him. A serpent. Charlotte's hand finished setting down the bottle. Base on the linen, no click, fingers releasing one at a time. There was a thin old scar through his right eyebrow, pale, healed years ago. There was a heavy steel watch with a black dial on his left wrist and a platinum band on the little finger of his right hand, and a strand of black hair had come loose from the rest and fallen forward when he leaned in to listen. She took all of it in the way you take in a room you have to keep working in. She kept her eyes moving. She had already looked away by the time the second thought arrived, the thought that the eye had been positioned deliberately so that it faced backward, so that it watched whatever was behind him. Miss. The older man, in English, smiling. Is there rain tonight? They tell me rain. Not until 4, sir. That's what the radar says. 4. He tapped the table twice with the jade ring, pleased. You checked. I take a bus, sir. He laughed, delighted with her, and turned back to his companion, and said something in Korean with a number in the middle of it. Charlotte lifted her empty tray, said, I'll be nearby, and turned to go. She passed the station on her way to the wall clock. 11:54. Sonia was still holding the bottle of still water against her chest with both arms, and had not moved from the wall, and looked at Charlotte the way you look at somebody who has come back from a room you were told not to enter. Charlotte set the tray down and squared it with the edge of the counter. 2 glasses of water, she said. That's all it was. She got 2 steps. Behind her, at the corner table, Kang Jun-ho, whose name she would not learn for another 26 minutes, had stopped listening to Park Do-yun. He was watching the waitress walk away, and he was doing the arithmetic he had been doing in rooms like this for 20 years without ever choosing to. Every person on this floor had reacted to him. The manager had bowed. The girl by the station had frozen against a wall. 3 men had put down their forks, and one of them had turned his chair, and Jun-ho had counted all of it before he sat down, because that count was how he stayed alive. This one had poured whiskey into a glass and not spilled a drop, and she had seen the serpent. He had felt her see it. In the half-second her chin came up, and her hand had gone on with what it was doing, as if nothing had entered the room at all. She was the only person on the 48th floor who was not performing fear. That meant one of 2 things. Either she had no idea who he was, or she was very, very good. He replayed the last 30 seconds the way he replayed everything. The pour had been dead level. The bottle had gone down on the cloth without a sound, which took either training or nerve, and the house here did not train anyone. She had come to the table from the right, which was correct, and left on the same line, which meant she had never once put her back fully to him. And before any of that, a manager screaming across the floor about a fingerprint, and the whole room watching, and the woman's hands hanging quiet at her sides. Jun-ho had seen men twice her size lose their hands in that same minute. Across the table, Park Do-yun had asked him something twice and was waiting with his palms open on the linen, still smiling, jade ring catching the amber light. Jun-ho reached for the whiskey she had poured and turned the glass a quarter turn on the linen without lifting it. Do-yun, he said, in Korean, eyes still on the room. Who chose this restaurant? Park Do-yun's smile stayed exactly where it was. You did, he said. The ice machine ate the sound of her name before she heard the rest of the sentence. Charlotte had come down the service corridor for lemon, 2 wedges, cut thin, for table 11, and the reach-in behind the ice machine was the only place the kitchen kept them after 11 o'clock. She had 34 minutes. She had the route in her head, and then a voice on the other side of the machine said something in Korean, low, and another voice answered in English, and the English was what stopped her hand on the door of the reach-in. When he drinks, the other one takes everything. She stayed where she was. Behind the machine there was a gap of maybe 4 feet between the steel and the wall, and she was inside it, and the 2 men talking were on the other side, near the linen cart. She could see the backs of their shoes under the machine's frame, rubber soles, black, silent shoes. And the manager? A second voice. Younger. A busser, maybe. She recognized the cadence of someone who wanted to be told it was fine. The manager will be in his office signing invoices. He signs invoices at midnight. He does it every night. Nobody has to touch him. And the girl on the table? There was a pause that lasted long enough for Charlotte to hear the compressor cycle. The girl on the table pours. That's all the girl on the table does. The shoes moved. She saw them turn, the toes coming around toward the machine, and she stepped back once, into the alcove where the folded linens lived, and put her shoulder against the wall. A man passed the mouth of the alcove without slowing. Black slim-fit jacket, black shirt, a small silver house pin at the lapel, a lanyard flipped backwards, so the badge hung face-in against his chest. She had seen him 3 or 4 times that night on the floor, and had assumed he was corporate. She had never once heard him speak until now. He walked to the end of the corridor. He stopped at the wall panel by the walk-in, opened it, put his hand inside, closed it. Then he took something from the inside pocket of his jacket and held it under the corridor light for about 1.5 seconds. A small bottle, amber glass, rubber dropper cap. He put it back in the pocket, adjusted the lapel with 2 fingers, and went through the swinging door into the dining room. Charlotte counted to 5, which was as long as her legs would let her wait, and followed. The room was exactly as she had left it. 22 people, the low hum of a room that has been fed. Sonia had gotten as far as folding napkins. The corner table by the glass had 2 men at it, and one of them was speaking with his hands, the jade ring catching the light every time he turned his palm up. The younger one wasn't there. The chair with its back to the wall was empty, and the charcoal jacket was over the back of it, and the whiskey glass sat where she had left it. 2 fingers, untouched, turned a quarter turn. Except now the glass was not where she had left it. She knew the placement of everything she set down. She had been placing things down for a living for 11 years. The glass had gone down at the 2 o'clock position from the water, a thumb's width off the edge of the linen. It was now sitting square in the middle of the setting, and the linen underneath had a crease running through it that had not been there. Vincent Aldridge was at the host stand at the far end of the room with a reservation tablet in his hands, and he was looking at the corner table. Charlotte went to her station. She set the lemon down. Her hands did what they always did, which was nothing anyone could read. 31 minutes. She could take the glass. She could walk over, say the whiskey had gone warm, offer to pour fresh. It would take 9 seconds. And the man with the lanyard would watch her do it, because he had not stopped watching that table since he came back through the door, and then he would know that she knew, and then there would be a woman who knew, standing alone in a service corridor at midnight, in a building where a man signed invoices at midnight, and nobody had to touch him. Sonia said something about the ice. Charlotte reached under the station, took a clean highball from the rack, the same shape, the same weight, the third from the left, the ones that came out of the polisher last, and set it on her tray. She poured water into it. Not 2 fingers. 2 fingers exactly, the way whiskey sits, because from 6 feet away, amber and clear are the same thing when the light is coming off the glass wall. "You're taking them water?" Sonia said. He asked for it. He had not asked for it. She crossed the room the long way, past the 6-top, past the woman in green who lifted 2 fingers off the tablecloth to thank her for nothing at all. She saw Aldridge's head turn to follow her, and she let him follow her, because a waitress crossing a room with a tray is the least interesting thing in any restaurant on earth, and the trick was to be exactly that and nothing more. The younger man came back through the far door as she reached the table. He sat down without touching the jacket on the chair, said something in Korean to the older one, and the older one laughed with his whole chest. Charlotte set the tray on the folding stand. She lifted the fresh glass. She leaned in over his right shoulder to place it, the side the serpent was on, the side she was not supposed to look at, and she set it into the space between his ear and the collar, at the volume of a person reciting a wine list. "Drink mine. Yours is poisoned." She set the glass down at the 2 o'clock position. She picked up the old one on the same motion, the way you clear anything, and put it on the tray. He never stopped talking. He said 4 more words in Korean to the man across from him. He turned his palm up. He reached without looking and took the glass she had just placed and brought it to his mouth and drank. And the amount he drank was the amount a man drinks when he is being polite to a bottle he chose. And he set it down again in the middle of the setting. The older man kept talking about a building in Queens. Charlotte took the tray and walked away with a used glass on it, which is the most ordinary object in the world. She did not go to the bar. She went to the far station, the one behind the column, and she poured the whiskey into the drain of the hand sink and ran the tap for 4 seconds and put the glass upside down in the crate with the others that were going through the machine. Then she stood there, with both hands flat on the steel. Behind her, the room laughed at something. 26 minutes. Sonia found her there with a stack of dessert menus against her chest. Pruitt wants the corner table offered the plum thing. Then Pruitt can offer it. He said you. Charlotte took her hands off the steel and turned around and made her face into the face she used for tables. Give me 2 minutes. Are you crying? I'm standing next to a hand sink. Sonia looked at her a moment longer than she needed to, then went back out to the floor, and Charlotte let herself have exactly 1 breath with her eyes shut. Then she opened them, straightened the front of her apron, and thought about the wall panel by the walk-in that a man had opened and closed with 1 hand. She had watched maintenance open that panel twice in 2 years, once for the fire alarm test, once when the walk-in compressor tripped and half the corridor lights went with it. The lights in the corridor were on, which meant he had not gone into that panel for the lights. She picked up a bin of dirty ramekins, because carrying something makes you invisible, and she carried it toward the kitchen, and at the swinging door she looked back once. The host stand was empty. The tablet was face down on the little shelf where the reservation book used to live. The stool was pushed in. The coat check had a charcoal wool overcoat in it, and nothing else out of order, and a busser was refilling a water pitcher, and there was no man in a black slim-fit jacket anywhere on the floor. She went into the corridor. It was empty too. The linen cart had been moved flush against the wall. The wall panel by the walk-in was closed, and above it, mounted in the corner where the ceiling met the pipe run, the small dome camera that had watched that corridor every night for 2 years had a dead face. No green pinprick, no red. She walked 11 steps and looked at the second one, over the service elevator. Dead. Charlotte stood in a corridor with 2 blind cameras and a bin of ramekins in her arms, and did the arithmetic that she had been avoiding since the ice machine. Nobody had heard what Aldridge said except her. Nobody had watched the corridor except the cameras. Nobody had seen her lean over that man's shoulder except a room full of people who saw a waitress place a glass. She was the only person in the building who knew the night had been a plan, which also meant she was the only person in the building who could say so. She put the bin down on the shelf outside the dish pit. The dishwasher, a kid named Ernesto, took it without looking up. "You good?" "Yeah. You look like you saw the health inspector." "Something like that," she said, and went back out. The floor had thinned to 14. The six-top was signing. The woman in green had her coat over her arm. At the corner table, the older man was folding his napkin into a square, and the younger one had turned his chair 1 degree so that he could see both the door and the room, and he was not looking at her, and she understood that he had not looked at her once since she leaned over his shoulder, and that this was deliberate, and that it was probably the only reason she was still standing. The dessert order never happened. The older man stood up at 7 minutes to midnight, buttoned his jacket over the red tie, and shook hands with 3 strangers on his way to the door the way a politician crosses a room, and the younger one stayed in his chair and watched him do it. Charlotte cleared the table herself. 2 water glasses, 1 whiskey glass with a mouthful gone, 1 napkin folded into a square, 1 napkin left in a heap. She stacked them on the tray with the heap on top. Leave the glass. She had not heard him move. He was standing at the window with his back to her, and his reflection in the black glass was looking at the tray. "Which one?" "The one I drank from." She set it back down on the linen, alone in the middle of an empty table, and carried the rest away. She ran her closing sidework in 9 minutes. She wiped down, she pulled the mats, she counted her bank. Pruitt came out of the office at 4 minutes past midnight, with a pen still in his hand and a stack of invoices under his arm, and asked nobody in particular why the corner table hadn't been offered dessert. Charlotte punched out at 11 minutes past midnight. The service elevator was at the end of the back hall, past the lockers, and it was slow, and she had 19 minutes to be on a corner 2 blocks away. She pressed the button and put her coat on while she waited, and got the second arm in as the doors opened. He was already inside. He had the overcoat over his arm, and he was standing against the back wall with his hands loose at his sides, and the doors closed behind her before she had finished the thought of stepping back out. The car started down. "Why did you warn me?" he said. His English was unhurried and had almost no edge of anything in it. It was the first full sentence she had heard him say in a language she owned. "Because I knew you could die." He turned his head slightly toward her. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." The floor counter went from 44 to 43. "You could have said nothing," he said. "It would have cost you nothing." "It would have cost me something." "What?" Charlotte looked at the panel, knowing. He was quiet for 2 floors. "Did you know who I was?" he said, "when you leaned over that chair?" No. He looked at her fully then, and for the first time that night, she saw something move in that face. Not much, a millimeter at the corner of the mouth, the way a still surface registers something dropped in from a distance. Whatever answer he had prepared for, it had not been that one. "Say it again." "I didn't know who you were." She held his eyes because looking away now would have been worse. "I still don't. My manager told me not to look at your neck. That's everything I've got." The car passed 30. He reached into his jacket and took out a phone and turned the screen toward her without stepping closer. A still frame, gray, wide-angle, time-stamped. A loading dock, a roll-up door, a man in a black jacket walking in with a duffel over one shoulder and his lanyard hanging forward, badge out, face up toward the lens, for exactly as long as it takes a person to check whether a lens is there. "Do you know him?" "He works here." "Floor supervisor." "He started." She stopped. "I don't know when he started." 6 days ago," he said, "under a name that belongs to a man who died in Incheon in 2019. He was hired directly. He never went through your company's system. Someone signed him in." "Who signs people in?" "Someone with authority." He put the phone away. "That's the part that matters." Charlotte felt the floor of the elevator change under her feet, that half second where the car begins to think about stopping. 6 days, she said. "He's been walking past me for 6 days." He's been counting for 6 days, where the manager sits at midnight, which door has no camera on the outside, which server has the corner section. He let that stand for a floor and a half. Your section tonight was not your section. It was Sonia's. "And who moved you?" "Pruitt." Charlotte heard her own voice come out flat, because Sonia was shaking against a wall. "Then whoever built this counted on a girl who shakes," he said. "He got you instead. You're saying it wasn't him." "I'm saying he was paid." He said it the way another man might read a delivery schedule. Men like that are hands. Hands belong to somebody. Somebody who works for you. Somebody who eats at my table. The doors opened on the loading level. Cold came in off the concrete. The dock, the smell of wet cardboard, the yellow bollards, a security guard on a stool with a phone in his hand, who stood up fast when he saw who was in the car. Neither of them moved. "There's a car outside," he said. "It will take you home." "No. You don't know what's outside." "I know what's outside. It's 52nd Street. Charlotte shifted her bag on her shoulder. "I have 2 kids. If a black car pulls up in front of my building at 1 in the morning, the whole floor sees it. Mrs. Delacruz sees it. My landlord's nephew sees it. And then that's my life now, and I didn't choose it. I just poured a glass of water." He listened all the way to the end. He did not interrupt her once, and men had been interrupting her all night. "All right," he said. "That's it?" "You said no." He shrugged one shoulder, barely. "I heard you. People say no to you often?" "Tonight," he said, "one person." Charlotte adjusted the strap of her bag. "There's a man upstairs who's going to notice that glass is empty and I'm still breathing." He noticed 20 minutes ago. "And you let me finish my shift." "I let you finish your shift," he agreed, "because a woman who leaves early is a woman who knew something. A woman who wipes down her station and counts her drawer is a woman who poured water." She thought about the tablet lying face down on the host stand, and the stool pushed neatly in, and the two dark cameras in a corridor that ran the length of the building. "He's gone," she said. "Yes. Then who's watching the door tonight?" "I am," he said. She stepped out onto the dock. The guard was standing at attention against a wall like a man trying to be a pipe. She got 4 steps before he spoke again, and his voice had come down, and it reached her without him raising it at all. "Your children." She stopped. "Are they safe tonight?" The question went in somewhere under the ribs, and the thing that came apart wasn't fear exactly. It was the arithmetic of the last 3 hours, reorganizing itself around 2 beds in Inwood. She turned around. "Why would you ask me that?" "Because I asked myself the same question about mine, once," he said, "and I was too late by 9 hours. The bag slipped down her arm. She caught it at the elbow, and the folded paper that had been writing in her apron pocket all night under the service cloth came out with the motion and went edge first onto the concrete, face up, the red stamp on it bright as a taillight under the dock lights. Final notice. $840, Monday. Charlotte bent and picked it up and folded it into her palm in one movement, and she made herself look at him while she did it, because looking down would have been the same as answering. He had seen it. She knew he had seen it, because he had been watching her hands from the second she walked into that elevator. He said nothing about it. He put the overcoat on instead, slowly, one arm and then the other, and when he was done he pushed the button to hold the elevator doors, and stood there with his hand on the panel. "Kang Jun-ho," he said. It landed in the cold with no weight attached to it at all, and the guard against the wall made a sound like a man swallowing. "Charlotte," she said, "it's on the tag." "I read the tag before you finished pouring." He held the doors. 6 letters, brass. It was the only true thing anyone showed me tonight. The doors started to close and he let them, and the last thing she saw was his hand coming off the panel. Charlotte walked out through the dock gate onto 52nd Street, with the invoice still balled in her fist, and 11 minutes on the clock, and she made it half a block before her phone buzzed in her coat. Not Loretta. No name at all. Charlotte stopped walking to read it, and the invoice fell out of her fist a second time. The message was a photograph, a hallway she knew better than her own face. Brown carpet worn silver down the middle, a radiator painted over 11 times, a plastic wreath still hanging from March, and a door, her door, 4C, the C hanging crooked on its single screw since the week she moved in. Under the photo, 4 words, and 2 of them were her children's. "Micah and Nia Rose are sleeping. For now." Her thumb moved to call Loretta. She got as far as the second ring before she killed it. If someone was standing in that hallway, a phone ringing inside the apartment at midnight would move Loretta to the door. Loretta was 63 and had a bad knee and a chain lock that a man could pull out of the frame with one hand. Loretta would look through the peephole because that is what people do, and a peephole tells you nothing about a man who already knows he has been seen. Charlotte lowered the phone. 12 feet away, a bus went past the corner of 52nd, with its interior lights on, and 4 people inside it, and she watched it take the turn without any part of her body deciding to run. The number on the front was the right number. It was 1231. She had never once missed it in 2 years. Behind her, a door opened somewhere along the loading side of the building, and she was moving before she heard footsteps. Not toward the corner. Back. Back toward the dock, the yellow bollards, the guard on the stool, the freight elevator, the only building in Manhattan where she currently knew the name of one dangerous man instead of none. The guard stood up when he saw her coming. "Miss, we're locked." "Kang Jun-ho," she said. The guard sat back down and picked up a radio he had not used all night. She rode up alone. 48 floors is a long time with a photograph in your hand. She looked at it twice more, and each time she found something new that she wished she hadn't. The angle was low, chest height, taken from a phone held casually at the hip. The light on the left edge of the frame was warm. The bulb outside 4D, the one Mrs. Delacruz replaced herself because the super never came. Whoever took it had stood there long enough to notice the light was flattering. The doors opened on the service corridor. The dead camera still hung over them with its little unlit eye. The dining room had gone to half power. Chairs upturned on tables, linen stripped, the long glass wall showing nothing now but the room reflected back at itself. Sonia's station was cleared. Pruitt's office light was off. The floor smelled of the pink sanitizer they used at Close. Junho stood at the corner table with his overcoat over the chair and his phone flat in his palm. He looked up, and whatever he read on her, he read fast. "Show me." She put the phone in his hand. He held it at arm's length, then closer. He enlarged the door number with 2 fingers. He did not ask her whose hallway it was. "Inwood," she said. "Broadway and 207th. 4th floor, the building with the green awning." "Who is with them?" "Loretta, my neighbor. She's 63. "Armed?" The question was so ordinary in his mouth that it took her a second to hear it. "She's a church lady." He gave the phone back. Then he made a call, and he made it standing in the middle of a closed restaurant with his back to the glass, and he spoke for 11 seconds. Korean, low, unhurried. She caught nothing except the 2 words in the middle that were not Korean. "Charlotte Rivera." He hung up. "Sit down." "I'm not sitting down. You've been standing since 4 in the afternoon. I've been standing since I was 19. He let that go. He pulled out the chair anyway, turned it toward her, and left it there, and the fact that he did not push it any further was the thing that made her sit. He stayed on his feet. From the pocket of the folded coat he took a second phone, smaller, older, a scratched screen, and set it face up on the linen where the whiskey glass had been. The glass itself was gone now. She noticed that and filed it. 11 minutes, he said. For what? For an answer. An answer to what question? He looked at the door of the restaurant. I did not ask a question. I gave an instruction. She waited for more. More did not come, so she filled it herself, out loud, because silence had become unbearable in the last 4 minutes. The men who followed me here tonight, that's who you called. No one followed you here tonight. Then how does someone have a photo of my door? Because they did not need to follow you. He turned back. Your name is on your chest for 8 hours a night. There is one Charlotte Rivera in the payroll of this building. Payroll has an address. Her hands went cold in a way that had nothing to do with the room. Pruitt's office. Anyone with a key. He carries them on his belt. He carries them on his belt, Junho agreed. And he signs invoices at midnight with the door open. And tonight he was told to keep the room open past service, by someone he was very eager to please. She sat with that. On the far side of the glass, a helicopter crossed the park with its light blinking, and she watched it go because looking at him was too much work. Say the number, she said. You called someone. How many people did that call reach? You will know in 9 minutes. That's not an answer either. It's the only honest one I have. The scratched phone lit up at 7 minutes instead of 11. He read it standing, then answered it in 1 syllable, and then he said, in English, deliberately, so she would hear every word of it, "Bring it up, she's here." Who's coming up? Charlotte said. The man who keeps the records. 4 minutes later, the freight elevator opened, and Yoon Sang-hoon came into the dining room with a limp on the left leg and a leather satchel he set on the nearest table before he had finished nodding at Junho. 61, maybe more. Gray crew cut. The kind of stillness that came from having done a job so long it no longer produced any expression. He took out a tablet and did not sit. Confirmed at 12:44, he said. His English was slow but exact. The order went out through all 6 channels: Seoul, Incheon, Los Angeles, Queens, Fort Lee, Vancouver. It is closed. It cannot be pulled back. Read her the order, Junho said. Yoon looked at Charlotte for the first time. He had the courtesy to hesitate. Read it. Yoon turned the tablet a quarter turn so it faced her, and he read from it in English anyway, which she understood was a kindness. Protect Charlotte Rivera and her children. No one goes near them. This comes from Kang. The room stayed exactly as quiet as it had been. How many? Charlotte said. Yoon's eyes went to Junho and came back. Under 2,000 men. How many is under? 1,940 in the network. Perhaps 60 more attached. And all of them got that. All of them received the name. And the address. To protect a house, Yoon said, you must know which house. And my kids. And Yoon set the tablet down on the linen very carefully, the way a man sets down something he wishes he had not carried. The order includes photographs, he said, so that a driver at the corner recognizes a boy of 5 and a girl of 3 and does not let them cross alone. Charlotte stood up. The chair went back 4 inches on the stone and made a sound that carried across the whole empty floor. You put my children's faces, she said, in the hands of 2,000 criminals. In the hands of my people, Junho said. Your people. She laughed once, a hard, ugly sound she did not recognize as her own. One of your people paid a man to poison you at that table. 6 days, he walked through this building in a suit. He carried a badge with a dead man's name on it, and somebody with authority signed it. You told me that. You told me that yourself, downstairs, 40 minutes ago. She pointed at the tablet. So which 2,000 are yours? Count them for me. Right now. Out loud. Yoon looked at the floor. Junho did not move away from her, which was somehow worse. He took it standing at conversational distance, with his hands at his sides. You're right, he said. Don't do that. You're right, and it is still done. Then undo it. It doesn't undo. His voice stayed where it had been all night, low, level, unhurried, and it made her want to break something. A message that reaches 2,000 men cannot be recalled. If I send a second message tonight saying, ignore the first bell, then every man who wants you dead learns that the protection is thin. There is one thing worse than being known, Miss Rivera. It is being known and unguarded. Don't call me that. Charlotte. You don't get to use that either. She was shaking now, and she hated it, and she pressed her hands flat against the table to stop it, and the table gave her nothing. Do you understand what my life is? I ride a bus. I get home at 1:20. I put my daughter's shoes by the door so I don't wake her looking for them at 6. Nobody in that building knows my last name. Nobody. That's not sad. That's the whole thing. That's the point. That's how a woman with 2 kids and no man stays invisible enough to keep them. And you, her throat closed. She waited for it to open. You made me famous in 4 seconds. I made you expensive to touch. I made myself touchable when I told you not to drink. She heard it as it left her, and it landed in the middle of the room and sat there. That's what happened. That's the actual sentence. I could have walked past that table. Sonia would have served him. Sonia was assigned. Sonia was assigned. Sonia was assigned. Shaking against a wall. And Pruitt moved me in because I don't shake. And I stood there and I did the one thing that nobody in this building would have done. And now there is a photograph of my front door on my phone. Junho said nothing. Say something. There's nothing in that I can argue with. Then argue with something else. All right. He picked up the tablet and turned it so the screen faced away from her and set it down again. Argue with this. If you had walked past that table, I would be dead at 11:58, and you would have gone home on your bus, and nobody would ever have written your name on anything. That is the trade you are asking me to feel sorry about. I don't. I won't. And you would not have taken it either, because you already didn't. That's not fair. No. She turned away from him, toward the glass wall, and saw herself standing in an empty restaurant in a black service shirt, with the sleeves still rolled once, and behind her reflection, 48 floors down, a city that did not know anything had happened. The invoice was still in her left hand. She had been holding it the entire time. $840, due Monday, and she noticed with a kind of distant amazement that at some point in the last hour, it had stopped being the worst piece of paper she owned. They're going to move them, she said. Who is? Loretta. The kids. She turned around. Whoever took that photo is standing in a hallway with one exit and a stairwell. If they wanted them tonight, they'd have them. They're waiting. Which means the photo wasn't a plan. It was a message. Somebody wanted me to see it. Yoon lifted his head. Say it again, Junho said. They're not after my kids. They're using them to steer me. Her voice had leveled out without her permission, and she followed it. You don't send a picture to a woman you're about to take from. You send a picture to a woman you want to move somewhere. Move you where? Yoon said. Away from here. She looked at Junho. Away from here. Him. The two men looked at each other, and something passed between them in a language that had nothing to do with Korean. Junho pulled out the chair he had offered her before, and this time he sat in it himself, elbows on his knees, hands loose. Tell me the sentence, he said, the one you heard behind the ice machine, word for word, not what it meant, what was said. I already, word for word. She closed her eyes. The hum of the compressor, the gap of 4 feet between the machine and the wall. 2 voices, one of them Aldridge's, though she had not known it was Aldridge yet, the smell of wet cardboard from the recycling. When he drinks, the other one takes everything. She opened her eyes. That's it. That's all of it. Then the other one said something about the manager signing invoices at midnight, that nobody would have to touch him, and then something about the girl at the table only serving. Nobody spoke. Charlotte heard her own sentence again, on delay, the way you sometimes do, and this time she heard the hole in it. They never said your name. Junho went very still. Twice, she said slowly. Twice they talked about you, and both times it was with he. When he drinks. Not Kang, not the boss, not a name at all. She took one step toward him. I stood 4 feet from 2 men who were about to kill the most dangerous man in this room, and neither of them said who he was. Nobody says a name out loud when they're afraid of it, fine, but they weren't afraid. They were bored. One of them was chewing gum. Charlotte, they didn't say your name because your name wasn't the important part of the sentence. She pointed at the empty place on the linen where the glass had stood all night. The other one takes everything. That's the whole plan. That's the entire job. You're not the target. You're the stain. Step. Somebody isn't trying to kill Kang Junho. She stopped, because she could see he had already arrived and was waiting for her out of courtesy. Somebody is trying to replace. Yoon Sung-hoon said something in Korean, 3 words, and it was the first time all night that anyone in that room had sounded old. Junho stood up. He walked to the glass wall and stood there with his hands in his pockets, and for 8 full seconds he was a man looking at a city. There is no succession, he said, not in writing, not spoken. If I die tonight without a name spoken over me, 6 men become equal at the same hour, and 4 of them are already owed money by the other 2. He turned around. The one who moves first does not have to be chosen. He only has to be standing closest to the body. Then who was closest? Charlotte said. Everyone who ate at my table. Yoon spoke without lifting his eyes from the tablet. 14 men have eaten at that table this year. Narrow it, Junho said. 11 of them cannot sign a badge into a building in Manhattan. Then 3. Then 3. Yoon's thumb moved on the glass and stopped. He waited a beat too long before he said, You want me to write these names down? I want you to say them to nobody. Charlotte watched the old man's jaw work once and hold. It occurred to her that a man who had kept records for 40 years had just been asked to keep one in his head, and that the reason for that was standing in the room with him. There's a fourth possibility, she said. Both men turned. Sorry, 3rd and a half. She wiped her palms down the front of the apron before she noticed she was doing it. Whoever wrote the plan knew that a waitress would be at that table, not a waitress, Sonia. He knew who was on that section, and he built the whole night around the fact that she'd be too scared to look at anything. Pruitt changed it, Junho said. Pruitt changed it 40 minutes before service because Sonia was crying in the back. That's not a decision anybody could plan for. That's a manager panicking. She held up one finger, which means the man who wrote this had the floor chart, not the guest list, the staff chart. Who's on which station on a Thursday? Yoon looked at Junho. Where does that live? Junho said. Printed, 1 copy, taped inside the door of the office. The office he leaves open at midnight. With his keys on his belt, she said, and a man in a black suit who had 6 days to read it. Junho crossed the room and stopped at the corner table, and for a moment, his hand rested on the linen at the exact spot where the glass had been. He did not pick anything up. He was, she understood, counting something. He was told to keep the floor open past 11, he said. Pruitt. He told me so himself at the door, twice, because he wanted credit for it. Told by who? He didn't say a name. Junho turned his head, and the light along the glass caught the side of his neck. That is the 3rd time tonight. The room had gone cold in a way the thermostat could not account for. Charlotte pulled the sleeves of her shirt down over her forearms and rolled them back once, and did not know she had done either. The scratched phone on the linen buzzed. Once. Yoon reached it first, read it, and his shoulders changed. The car at the green awning, he said. Our men reached Broadway and 207th at 1:02. The apartment is quiet. The children are asleep. Charlotte breathed for what felt like the first time since the corner of 52nd. Her hand found the edge of the table and stayed there. Somewhere in the back of the room, the ice machine dropped a load into its bin, and she flinched at it, and Yoon had the grace to look at his tablet while she did. Say the part about the children again, she said. They are asleep, Yoon said. Both of them. The neighbor is awake watching television. She always falls asleep to it. She is awake, and, Yoon said, there is a second car, parked across the street, engine off, since 11:40. Whose? Yoon lowered the tablet. Ours, he said. Charlotte looked at Junho and found, for the first time that night, a face that had run out of composure and was holding the shape by hand. 11:40, she said. That's before I served you. Yes. That's before the glass. That's before anything happened. Yes. Then who sent a car to my house? She said. 12 minutes before I did the thing that made me matter. Yoon Sang-hoon turned the tablet around before anyone asked him to. The car is ours, he said. The plate is ours. The man behind the wheel is ours. He was told to sit there and watch a door. Told by whom? Junho said. The order came through the Queen's line. No name attached. Just a location and a shift. Charlotte set the phone down on the linen. Her hand stayed on it a second longer than it needed to. So one of your own men has been parked outside my building since before I poured anything. Yes. And he watched a stranger walk up to my floor and take a picture of my door. He watched the street, Yoon said. The photograph was taken from inside the hallway. Whoever took it did not come through the front. Junho stood. He crossed to the service door and held it open with his shoulder. Get the outside cameras. Every lens on that block, and every lens on this one. I want the loading dock going back 3 days. The building will want a warrant. The building's manager keeps his keys on his belt, Junho said. Go through the belt. Yoon left. Charlotte listened to the limp cross the tile until the elevator swallowed it. She sat down again because her legs made the decision for her. The room had gone to the temperature rooms go-to when the kitchen dies. 68 degrees held all night by a machine nobody thinks about, and now colder than that somehow. She pulled the crumpled invoice out of her left hand, flattened it against her thigh, folded it in half, and put it back in her apron pocket under the service cloth, where it had lived since 4 in the afternoon. Junho watched her do it and said nothing about it for the second time that night. At 1:22, the elevator brought up 2 men she had never seen, and between them, holding his own elbows, Park Do-yun. The jade ring caught the low light. His tie clip was gone. Somebody had taken it off him. Junho-ya. Park kept smiling, and the smile had gone loose at one corner. Whatever this is, kitchen, Junho said. They took him through the swinging door. Charlotte heard a stool scrape, then a click she recognized from television and had never heard in a room with her in it. Park's voice came through the door in Korean, rising, then flattening, then rising again. He's saying he chose nothing, Junho said. He's saying he chose nothing, was he? I invited him. Then he asked me, at my own table, who chose the restaurant. Junho turned his glass ring on his finger once. A man who set a trap does not point at the trap. Then why is he in your kitchen? Because whoever built tonight wants him there, and I want to know how badly. Charlotte looked at the swinging door. Through the porthole she could see one shoulder of a navy pinstripe suit and a hand, manicured, opening and closing on nothing. He's 52, she said. 53 in October. He tipped in cash last spring. 400 on a 1600 check, and he counted it twice so I'd see him counting. That's the man. That's not the man who poisons somebody. Junho's eyes came to her and stayed. Say the rest of it. The rest of it is that the person who did this had 6 days of a fake employee walking the halls, and a map that lives inside a locked office, and a manager who was told to keep the room open. She turned her hand over on the table. That's not a guest. A guest doesn't get 6 days. At 1:52, the service elevator opened again, and Yoon Sang-hoon came out of it faster than a man with that leg should move. He put the tablet down between them, angled it, and did not sit. Exterior, he said. The dock camera lives on a separate box in the sub-basement. The manager's keys open the sub-basement. The screen showed gray, concrete, yellow bollards, the corner of a dumpster, the timestamp burning in the bottom right in white numerals. Start at 4, Junho said. They ran it at 8 times speed. Delivery men. A produce truck that idled 20 minutes and left a puddle. A busser stepping out to smoke, then again, then again. Ernesto in a white coat carrying a bag with both arms. There. Charlotte's finger stopped an inch off the glass. Back it up. Yoon backed it up. Play it normal. The timestamp read 1814. A dark gray wool coat came into frame from the right, long, moving without hurry. The man under it went to the dock door and put his hand flat on it, not knocking, just resting there, and the door came open from the inside before he had to ask. He turned his face a quarter to check the street. Charlotte leaned in. Stop. Yoon stopped it. She had seen the frame for less than a second, and she was already sure, and being sure, made something in her chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with fear. He came in 7 hours before you did. Nobody answered her. She looked up. Junho had not moved from where he stood, and his face had gone to the stillness she had mistaken, 4 hours ago, for calm. Yoon Sang-hoon had taken his glasses off. He held them by one arm, and his thumb worked the hinge open and shut, open and shut. "Say the name," Junho said. Yoon did not. "Sang-hoon." "Lee Tae-sung," Yoon said. The room took the name the way a room takes a dropped plate. Charlotte watched a thing happen in Kang Junho's face that she would think about for a long time afterward. Not a break, not a flinch, a subtraction. Something left him at the eyes and did not come back, and what was standing there after was the same man minus one thing he had been carrying for 15 years. 15 years, Yoon said quietly, to nobody. 16 in November. Junho pulled the chair out and sat down in front of the tablet, and he looked at the frozen frame the way a man reads a document he already signed. "That's his coat. He's had that coat since Fort Lee," Charlotte said. "Who is he?" "He is the man who signs what I don't have time to sign." Junho did not take his eyes off the screen. "He is the man who moves people through doors. He hires. He pays. He is the reason nothing in this city has ever needed my signature on it. Then he could put a dead man's name on a badge. He is the only one of the three who wouldn't have had to ask anyone for permission." Yoon set 2 fingers on the edge of the tablet. "He was in this building at 6:14, and at 9, he called me from a car to ask whether the reservation had been confirmed. He asked you to confirm a table he had already walked into. He asked in a tired voice," Yoon said, like a man being thorough. Charlotte watched the frozen frame, the flat hand on the dock door, the quarter turn toward the street, the low hairline, the thin rimless glasses catching the security light. A heavy-set man in a good coat, checking traffic before he stepped inside. She had passed 40 men like that on her way to work. "He knew the door would open," she said. "He didn't knock." Yoon put his glasses back on. "It explains the section change." "It doesn't," Charlotte said. "Pruitt changed the section." "Pruitt was told to hold the room open," Yoon said. "A man who takes one instruction takes 2. The instruction he took was a floor plan with one waitress circled, and the waitress circled was the one who shakes." He tapped the tablet twice. "Sonia Reyes has been on the schedule 7 weeks. 6 days is enough to learn who shakes." Charlotte thought about Sonia against the wall with a water bottle in both arms and her mouth open, and the 40 minutes that had moved a name from one square of a printed map to another. "He planned around a girl who would drop the tray," she said. "He planned around a girl who would remember nothing," Junho said. "A woman who is frightened cannot testify. She can only say it was fast. And then Pruitt moved me because I don't shake. And then you didn't shake." She sat back. The chair was hard through her uniform, and she felt every hour of the shift arrive at once in her lower back. "Play it forward." Yoon played it forward. Lee Tae-sung went in at 18:14 and came out at 18:41, 27 minutes, and in the interval, nothing happened on the loading dock except a cat crossing the frame at 18:29. When he came out, he had nothing in his hands, and his coat was open. "He didn't carry anything in," Charlotte said. "He didn't carry anything out." "He went to the panel," Junho said. "The panel by the walk-in." She said it slowly, because it was arriving as she said it. "Aldridge opened that panel at 11:55 and closed it and walked away with the bottle still in his pocket. He wasn't putting anything in there. He was taking something out that was already waiting." Yoon looked at Junho. Junho looked at the screen. 27 minutes, Yoon said. "Long enough to leave a package, walk the service corridor, and count the cameras." "He didn't kill the cameras himself." Charlotte shook her head once. "He was here at dinner service. The room was full at 6. Somebody would have—" and she stopped, because she had just heard the shape of it. "Nobody would have. He's a man in a good coat. If he walks past me at 6:15, I hold the door for him. Yes, Junho said. I would have held the door for him. You did better than that. You held a glass. She looked at her hands on the black stone table and made them lie flat. Yoon spoke into the quiet. There's more on the box. Say it. The order to send a car to Broadway and 207th went out through Queens at 11:40. I traced the handset. The handset is registered to a garage in Fort Lee that has been carried on our books for 11 years as maintenance. He waited. Tae-sung signs the maintenance. 11:40, Charlotte said. That's before the glass. That's before the glass. Then he had my address before I did anything. Junho put his hand flat beside the tablet. It was the first time all night she had seen him touch a surface without a reason. No, he said. Listen to the order. The car was told to watch a door, not to enter it, not to take anyone. He turned to Yoon. When did the second instruction go out? Yoon scrolled, stopped. 12:51. 12:51. Junho let it sit. 11 minutes after her phone rang. The photograph came in at 12:31, Charlotte said. And it came from inside your hallway, from a man already standing there. He looked at her, and the look had weight in it that she did not want and could not refuse. The car was a leash on a house he might need later. The photograph was written tonight. After. After what? After a waitress ruined his evening. Charlotte's mouth went dry in a way water would not have fixed, so the children weren't in it. The children were not in it. He added them at 12:31 because he needed you gone from this floor, and the fastest way to move a mother is to put her hallway on her screen. Junho's voice did not rise, and somehow that was worse. He had one plan for me and no plan for you. So he improvised, and the thing he improvised was your son's name. She heard the name of her own child in the mouth of a man in a charcoal suit at 2 in the morning, and everything that had been theory in her all night stopped being theory. He typed Micah, she said. He typed both. He had to look them up. Somebody had to look them up. She was standing now, and she did not remember deciding to. That's a phone call. That's somebody in an office at midnight pulling my daycare file so a man can write a sentence. Yes. That's worse. Yes. She walked 3 steps toward the glass and stopped. 48 floors down, the avenue was doing the thing it does at 2 in the morning, which is pretend to sleep. A single cab, a truck with its hazards on. I was an accident at 11:58, she said. What am I now? Junho did not soften it. Now you are a name he has written down. Behind them, the kitchen door swung, and one of the 2 men leaned out and said something short in Korean. Junho answered with 4 words. The man went back in, and the click came again, in reverse this time, and Park Do-yoon's voice stopped mid-sentence. Take his ring back to him, Junho said, and his clip, and drive him home. That's it? Charlotte said. He'll want an apology. He won't get one tonight, and he knows why, and in 3 days, he'll tell this story at a table, and it will be the best thing that ever happened to him. Junho stood. He was going to be the answer. Somebody spent 6 days building a room where Park Do-yoon was the only answer, and then a waitress put a different glass on the table, and the room stopped working. Yoon was already typing. Fort Lee or the garage? Neither. He won't run to anything he signs. Junho took his overcoat off the chair. He'll go to the place he thinks is boring. Find the boring one. That could take. It'll take an hour. It took 51 minutes. At 3:24, the scratched phone lit up on the linen, and Yoon read it and did not smile. Which Charlotte understood by then was how the man celebrated. A dry cleaner on Bergen Line. 2nd floor, lights on. His wife's cousin's name on the lease. Nobody moves, Junho said. Not one man closer than the corner. He stays exactly where he is until I say. Understood. and Sang-hoon. Junho put one arm into the overcoat. The order about her stands, word for word. It does not soften, and it does not expire. Yoon looked at Charlotte for a half-second, the first time all night he had looked at her as a person instead of a variable, and inclined his head about an inch. Then he took the tablet and the satchel and the limp back into the elevator. At 4 o'clock, the scratched phone rang once more, and Junho listened for 6 seconds and set it face down. "Your building," he said. 2 men on the street, 2 in the lobby, 1 on the 4th floor landing. "Mrs. Vance is awake. She has been informed that there was a break-in attempt at the pharmacy on the corner and that the super asked for overnight security on the block. You lied to a church lady. I let her sleep." Charlotte laughed once, and it came out wrong, and she pressed the back of her wrist against her mouth until it stopped. Micah? Asleep. Both of them asleep. The man on the landing says the television is on with no sound. That's her. She does that. She lowered her hand and breathed out through her nose, slow, the way she had been breathing since 4 in the afternoon without noticing. Nia Rose sleeps sideways. She ends up with her feet on the pillow by 2. The man on the landing did not go in. Good. He won't. She thought about the hallway carpet and the crooked C on the door, and someone standing there long enough to frame a shot, and then she made herself stop thinking about it, because the thinking had a bottom, and she could not afford to reach it in a room with strangers in it. She'll ask me tomorrow why there's a man in the hallway. There won't be a man in the hallway tomorrow. There will be a man on the block, and you will never see him, and neither will she. For how long? Until it is boring, Junho said. That is the whole job, making it boring again. He picked up the folded overcoat and did not put it on. He walked her out through the dark dining room, past the chairs stacked on the tables, past the station where the tray still sat squared to the edge of the counter, and at the service elevator, he pressed the button for her, and then stepped back so she could stand in front of it alone. The number over the doors began to climb. "Your invoice," he said. She turned. "Don't. I'm not going to." He put his hands in his coat pockets. "You'd have to take it from someone, and you'd take it from a friend, and not from me, and I'd rather you kept saying no to me. It's the only reason I trust anything you've said tonight." $840, she said. "It's a stupid number to be famous for. It's a Monday. It's a Monday." The elevator arrived and the doors opened on the same scuffed steel box she had ridden 2,000 times, and she stepped in and turned around, and for the first time all night she was the one standing higher than he was, by the half-inch of the threshold. "When this is finished," Kang Junho said, "would you have dinner with me somewhere nobody is trying to kill me?" Charlotte held the door with her palm. "Do you always ask women out after almost getting poisoned? I've never needed one of them to save me before." The doors began to close and she let them. Through the last 4 inches of steel, without hurrying, she said, "Then maybe I'll say yes." The doors shut. He listened to the cables take her down 48 floors, and then the building went back to being a building. He walked back into the empty dining room and stood at the glass with the city laid out under him. And the rain the radar had promised for 4 o'clock started at 9 minutes past, exactly as far off as she had said it would be. The phone in his hand lit up. Yoon Sang-hoon, 3 lines. The Bergen Line instruction did not originate with Taesung. He received it. Handset traced upstream, out of network. He was carrying an order, not giving one. Attachment recovered from the same device. Junho opened the attachment. A photograph. A woman in a black service shirt with a small brass tag over her left chest, walking in through the loading dock door of this building, chin up, bag on her shoulder, hair loose. He looked at it for a long moment before he let himself look at the corner of the frame. The timestamp was 3 weeks old. 48 floors below him, Charlotte Rivera stepped out onto 52nd Street, into the first of the rain, and did not know she had been chosen before she ever poured the water. Junho put the phone face down on the linen before he let himself think about it. Then he turned it back over and looked again, because the first look had been the kind a man takes when he wants a thing to be something else. It was still her, still the loading dock, still the brass tag catching the light off the door. He pressed Yoon's number. Where did the picture come from? Yoon answered like a man who had been standing with the answer in his mouth. It came in with the instruction. Same packet. The device outside the network sent both. The order about the restaurant, and that. Attached to what line? To a sentence. 4 words. Yoon paused, and the pause was the closest he had come all night to hesitation. This one, if needed. The rain had reached the glass. It came sideways at 48 floors, the way it always did up there, and the drops didn't fall so much as arrive. If needed, Junho said. That's the whole line. 3 weeks. 3 weeks and 2 days by the file clock. She was photographed on a Tuesday, entering by the dock, 4 minutes past 4 in the afternoon. He was already reaching for the overcoat. Send me the packet, all of it. And Yoon, the man in the laundromat, doesn't know we can see the line above him? No, he thinks the line is his to keep. Keep it that way. He took the service elevator down. 48 floors is a long time to hold one thought without turning it over, and he turned it over twice. Someone had walked into the alley behind a restaurant 3 weeks ago, waited for a shift change, and taken a photograph of a waitress who had never done anything but carry a tray, then filed it, the way you file a spare key. If needed. Charlotte was under the awning at the corner of the building, one shoulder to the brick, her coat collar turned up wrong on one side. The rain had already gone from first drops to the real thing. Down the block, the bus shelter stood lit and empty, the broken panel dark where the schedule should be. She heard the door and turned before he was out of it. They're still asleep, she said. It came out before hello. I called. Loretta answered on the second ring this time. She thinks I'm on overtime. They're asleep. You already knew that. I did. He stopped 2 steps short of her, under the edge of the awning, and let the rain have his shoulder. I need you to look at something before you go anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. There's no bus until 5:40. There's a car? There's a car, she agreed. I know. There's been a car since 4 in the afternoon 3 weeks ago. Apparently, I just didn't know what I was looking at. He held out the phone. She didn't take it right away. She wiped her palm on her coat first, which was the kind of thing a person does when a phone is about to be heavier than a phone. Then she took it. He watched her face and got nothing, and that told him more than a face would have. That's the dock door, she said. Yes. That's my tag. Yes. What's the date? He told her. She looked at the picture a while longer. Rain came off the awning in a thin rope between them and hit the sidewalk and split. A Tuesday, she said. 4 minutes past 4. I know what Tuesday that was. She handed the phone back the way you hand back something you don't want fingerprints on. I came in at 4 because I was covering Marisol's open. I remember because I had the wrong shoes on. I'd walked out of the house in the flats with the split seam, and I stood in the locker room at 4:06, looking at my own feet, doing math on whether I could work 9 hours in them. Was there anyone at the dock? There's always someone at the dock. Deliveries until 4:30. Linen, produce, the fish guy who parks across the bollards and argues about it. Someone who wasn't delivering. She went quiet. Not the quiet of a woman with nothing, the quiet of a woman opening a drawer. There was a 2-top, she said slowly. That night. Not at 4. Later, around 7:30, before the rush turned. 2 men, both white, one of them older. They sat at 11. They ordered water, and 1 plate of the bread, and they sat 40 minutes, and they didn't eat it. You remember one table from 3 weeks ago. I remember every table that doesn't eat, she said it flat. You want to know what's wrong in a dining room, you look for the plate nobody touched. They paid cash. They tipped 40% on a $9 check, which nobody does unless the check was never the point. What did they look like? The older one had a hearing aid he kept touching, beige, behind the left ear. The younger one had a folder under his forearm the whole time, one of those cardboard ones with the elastic, and he never opened it, and he kept his arm on it while he drank water. Her eyes went past Junho to the street and came back. I remember thinking, that's a man who brought homework to dinner. Which one paid? The younger one. Cash out of his front pocket, folded, already counted. People who fold money in their front pocket have decided in advance how long they're staying. Did they speak to you? One of them asked me my name. The rain filled the space where his answer should have gone. He didn't ask like a man being friendly, she said. He asked like a man confirming. I said, it's on the tag. He said, Charlotte, and then he said, Rivera, and I laughed, because that's what you do. And I said, you read my mail? And he said the payroll list was on the wall by the time clock. Her jaw moved once. It isn't. It was 2 managers ago. Pruitt took it down when someone complained about last names. So he had been in the building before. Or somebody told him wrong and he repeated it wrong. Which is worse? I know which is worse, she said. That's why I said it. He put the phone away. Across the street, a car sat with its lights off and its wipers moving once every 20 seconds, which meant a man inside was staying awake and keeping the glass honest. Hours, he said, before she asked. I'm learning to tell. She pulled the collar straight, finally. So say it. Say the part you came down here to say. Lee Tae-sung did not choose you. I got that far by myself. Then get the rest. He looked at her when he said it, which he had not done much that night, and it landed. Tae-sung took an order. The order came from a device that has never touched my network. It arrived with a photograph of a woman he had no reason to know, 3 weeks before the dinner, marked as a resource. He didn't understand what he was holding. He put a car outside your building at 20 to midnight because the packet told him to hold a leash near your door, and he only understood what the leash was for at 31 minutes past 12, when the waitress who ruined his night turned out to be the woman already in the file. Say that in fewer words. Someone put you in the room. The rope of water off the awning stuttered where the wind took it. No, she said. Charlotte. No, because that's not how a schedule works. Her voice stayed low. It got harder instead of louder, and that was worse. Pruitt made that schedule. Pruitt moved Sonia off that section 40 minutes before service because Sonia was shaking, and Pruitt only moved her because he happened to walk past the wall and see her holding a water bottle with 2 hands. Nobody arranged that. I've watched that man lose a reservation book. He was given a station map with 1 girl circled. He did the opposite of what the map wanted. That's still the map's fault that you were near the table at all. That's the table. I'm talking about the ice machine. She stepped out from the brick, into the rain, and didn't seem to notice she had. I was behind the ice machine because table 11 wanted lemon, and we were out at the front station. That's it. That's the entire reason I heard what I heard. Nobody schedules a lemon. No. So somebody wanted me in the building 3 weeks ago for a reason that has nothing to do with a lemon. And I was in the building anyway, because I'm always in the building, because I work 6 shifts in 5 days. She wiped her face with the back of her wrist, and the rain put it right back. What am I for? He didn't have it. That was the thing he noticed about himself in the second before he spoke. That for the first time since a glass had come toward him with 2 fingers of water in it, he was standing in front of a question with nothing prepared. I don't know yet, he said. That's the first thing you've told me all night without a number attached. It's the first thing I've said all night that doesn't have one. The guard's door opened along the wall, and the man from the dock leaned out, saw who was standing there, and closed it again with a great deal of care. Junho's phone went twice against his chest. Yoon, speak. The light went out. He turned his back to the wind. When? 90 seconds ago. Second floor, Bergen line. Then the stair light, then the side door. He came out the side, into a gray sedan, alone, driving himself. Alone. Alone. He didn't call anyone before he moved. We have the line, nothing outbound for 11 minutes, which means somebody called him. Inbound, 4 minutes ago. Same device. Junho watched the rain fall through the streetlight down the block and let 2 seconds go by, and Yoon, who had worked for him a long time, let them go by too. Nobody stops that car. Say it again, Yoon said, so I can repeat it exactly. Nobody stops that car. Nobody follows close enough to be seen. He drives where he was told to drive, and we learned the address he was given. A gust took the awning and made it drum. He is not the thing anymore. He is the string. You don't cut a string to find out what's on the end of it. And if the end of the string is a man with a gun, then we'll know where the man with the gun sleeps. He ended it. When he turned back, Charlotte was watching him with her arms crossed and the water running off her hair in a way that would have made her fix it on any other night of her life. He moved, she said. He moved. You let him. I did. Because he's on a leash too. Something moved at the corner of his mouth, 1 millimeter, the way it had in the service elevator. You do this fast, he said. I've been listening to men explain their own business to each other for 11 years, while I refilled their water. She said it without heat. You learn the shape of it. The one who explains isn't the one deciding. The one deciding doesn't talk at the table. Nobody said his name in the corridor either. Nobody said yours. She let the correction stand a second. Mine wasn't said either. The girl at the table just serves. That's what I got. And a picture of me from 3 weeks ago that says, if needed. You read the line. I read it upside down on your phone while you were looking at my face for a reaction. He laughed. It was almost nothing, a single breath through the nose in the rain, but it happened, and it startled them both a little. Come inside, he said. The rain isn't a decision. Inside where? The lobby. It's warm. There's a bench. The guard is ours as of an hour ago, and he is very frightened of me, so he will bring you coffee and be grateful for the errand. I'm not going back up to that room. I'm not asking you to. She looked down the block one more time at the shelter with the broken panel. 540 was 90 minutes away. 90 minutes on a bench in a lobby was still 90 minutes she was not standing in Loretta's doorway, telling her daughter's babysitter why 5 men she didn't know were sitting in a stairwell in Inwood. Coffee, she said. And then you're going to tell me what a person does with this in the morning, because I'm on the brunch shift Sunday. That's not a joke. That's $410 I've already spent in my head. He held the door. The lobby was marble and cold light and one dead fountain. The guard came up out of his chair so fast it went over backwards, and Charlotte, who had spent 2 years saying goodnight to that man and never once learned his first name, said, Sit down, Reuben, it's fine. And he sat down, and it was the first thing that had gone normally since 1:45 midnight. She took the bench. Junho stayed standing, near the glass, where he could see the street. Ask me, he said. Ask you what? Whatever you've been holding since the elevator. Charlotte turned the phone over in her hands, screen dark, and watched her own reflection in it. 9 hours, she said. He went very still. You said you were 9 hours late, she said. On a loading dock, to a stranger, at 19 minutes past midnight. You didn't have to say it. You said it anyway. She lifted her eyes. You said it to get me to answer a question about my kids. And it worked, and I've been carrying it around since, and I'd like it back or I'd like it explained, because I don't like owing a man a piece of information about my own children." The rain ran down the glass behind him, and the street beyond it went to water. "My sister," he said. Charlotte didn't move. She called the house at 6 in the morning, and I was in Incheon, and my phone was in a drawer in another room, because I was in a meeting where phones went in drawers. He said it in the same voice he used for logistics, which was the only way he had ever been able to say it. The meeting ran, the drawer stayed shut. When I opened it, there were 4 calls and no message, and I drove, and I was 9 hours behind the call. Was she? She was fine. He let that sit exactly 1 beat. Her husband wasn't. She had called me to ask what to do about a man who had come to the door twice that week, and by the time I answered, the question had already been answered by someone else. That's not the same as being late. It is when you are the reason a man comes to a door. Charlotte looked at him for a while. "That's why you made the call at 12:44, she said. "Before I asked, before I'd have let you." "Yes. You didn't do it for me." "I did it before I knew you," he said. "That isn't the same as not for you, but you're right that it wasn't a favor. Don't thank me for it. You already told me what it cost, and you were correct, and I did it anyway, and I would do it again in the same 11 seconds. She sat with the phone in both hands. "My mother used to say a debt you didn't agree to is still a debt," she said. She was talking about family. Turns out it travels. "You're not in debt to me." "I know, that's not what I said." She turned the phone once more. "I said I don't like owing you information, and now you've given me a sister and a drawer, so we're square, and I hate that too, because being square with you means there's a next thing." "There's a next thing," he agreed. "Say it now then. Not at 5:40 when I'm on a bus pretending to be a person." He considered her over the rim of the dead fountain. "Tomorrow you don't come to work," he said. "Sunday brunch. You call in. You take the flu. Pruitt will complain to a wall for 11 minutes, and then he will put Sonia Reyes on your section, and Sonia Reyes will do it badly, and nobody will die. And the $410 will still be $410 on Monday, which is when it's owed, which means it is not tomorrow's problem." He said it evenly. "You told me not to pay it, and I'm not paying it. I'm telling you not to stand in a lit dining room on a glass wall for 9 hours while a man in New Jersey drives towards someone I can't name yet." Charlotte looked at the floor between her shoes. "You know what's insane?" she said. "That's the most reasonable thing anyone said to me about that job in 2 years, and it came from you." "Reuben," she called, without looking away from him, "is that coffee real, or is that the machine?" "It's the machine, Miss Charlotte." "Then 2 sugars, because the machine can't be trusted." "2 sugars," Reuben said, and went, and was glad to go. "He's worked that desk 4 years, she said, once the corner had swallowed him. "I've said goodnight to him maybe 600 times. I found out his name tonight because a man with a serpent on his neck made him afraid enough to stand up." She turned the phone over again. "That's the part I'll think about next week. Not the poison. That." Junho's phone lit against his ribs. He read it standing, with the marble and the dead fountain behind him, and a woman on a bench waiting for cafeteria coffee, and Charlotte watched his shoulders and understood, before a single word reached her, that the night had not finished with either of them. "What?" she said. He didn't answer immediately, which he had not done all night. "The gray car took the bridge west," he said. "It's 40 minutes out of the city. That isn't the part." "Then say the part." He turned the screen around. The message wasn't from Yoon. It had come in on the small phone with the scratched screen, from a number with no history and no country attached, and it was 6 words long, and it was in English. "Ask her about the 3rd week." Charlotte read it twice. Then she set the coffee she hadn't been given down on a bench she was gripping with the other hand, and she said, very quietly, "It's talking about me." "It's talking to me," Junho said. "About you." Ruben came around the corner with 2 paper cups and stopped where he was, because neither of them had moved, and the fountain was dry, and outside the rain had finally found its rhythm against the glass. Junho typed 4 words with 1 thumb and sent them before Ruben reached the bench. What about the 3rd week? No punctuation. He turned the scratched phone face down on his knee and took one of the paper cups, and Ruben handed the second one to Charlotte and backed away toward his desk without asking a single question, which was the most professional thing anyone had done for her all night. The reply came in under a minute. It was a photograph, not of a street, not of a door, a form, a signature card, the kind kept in a drawer behind bulletproof glass, printed in blue and gray, the corners soft from handling. Across the top line, in block capitals, Charlotte Rivera. She set the coffee on the bench and took the phone with both hands. "That's not my handwriting," she said. "I know. You don't know that." "I watched you set down a bottle," he said. "You don't press that hard." She pinched the image open. Dykeman Street, a check-cashing place 4 blocks from her building, the one with the neon money order sign that had been out since Christmas. Under the signature, a date and a time stamped by a machine. Tuesday, 3 weeks and 2 days ago, 4:52 in the afternoon. Charlotte looked at the number for a long moment. "At 4:52 I was on the floor," she said. "I clocked in at 4. Marisol's open. There's a time card with my thumbprint on it." "Yes. So somebody stood at that window with my name. Somebody who had learned to spell it," Junho said, "from a woman who told them at a 2-top on a $9 check." The lobby fountain sat dry in its marble bowl, and the rain moved across the glass in sheets, and Charlotte held the phone and understood the shape of the thing, the way you understand a stare in the dark, with the body first, then the mind. Junho was already dialing. Yoon answered on the first ring, and Junho spoke in Korean for 11 or 12 seconds, then switched, deliberately, into English and set the phone on the bench between them with the speaker on. He had never done that before. It was not a courtesy. It was a statement about who was in the conversation now. "The account is open," Yoon said. His voice came flat and small out of the little speaker. "Opened that Tuesday. 2 deposits. 4,500, then 4,500, 11 days apart. Cash both times." 9,000, Junho said. 9,000. Charlotte breathed out through her mouth. "Source?" Junho said. "The counter is cash, so the counter says nothing, but the second deposit was carried in by a man who signed the courier log. The log is a formality, nobody checks it." A pause, the sound of Yoon scrolling. "The name in the log is the maintenance line, Fort Lee. Say it plainly. The garage pays it. Lee Tae-sung signs the garage." Charlotte stood up. She walked 4 steps toward the fountain and stopped and turned around, and when she spoke her voice was lower than it had been all night, which was worse. $9,000, she said. "In my name, 3 weeks before a man gets poisoned at my table." Junho waited. "And in my apron there's a bill for $840 with a red stamp on it." She laughed once. It came out wrong, and she heard it come out wrong, and she stopped it. A woman who owes, a woman who gets paid, a woman who serves the glass. Yes. Say the rest. "Park Do-yoon was the story for my house," Junho said. "You were the story for the police." The elevator behind them rang once for nobody, and the doors opened on an empty car and closed again. Charlotte came back and sat down. She picked up the paper cup and drank from it, and it was machine coffee with 2 sugars, and it was too hot, and she drank it anyway, all the way down, because her hands wanted something to do, and because Reuben had walked it across a marble floor for her at 4:45 in the morning. How long would it have held, she said. Long enough. Junho turned his cup a quarter turn on his knee. A man dies in a restaurant. The staff is questioned. Every server has a debt somewhere, so a debt alone is nothing. But a debt and $9,000 and a hand on the glass, that is not nothing. That is a week of headlines and a woman who cannot explain her own bank account. I'd have explained it. To whom? She had no answer for that, and he did not decorate the silence. My children, she said, would have gone somewhere while you explained. Charlotte put the empty cup on the bench beside her and pressed both palms flat against her knees. $840, she said. You wouldn't pay it. You said you'd rather I kept telling you no. That was the reason then. And now? Now there is a better one. He looked at her for the first time since the photograph. If $1 of mine ever touches that bill, it stops being a daycare invoice. It becomes the last line of somebody's case. You will never take money from me. Not this year. Possibly not ever. Do you understand what I'm telling you? You're telling me my poverty is evidence. I'm telling you it is the only clean thing you own tonight, he said. Keep it clean. Yoon's voice came out of the phone on the bench. Boss. Go. Route 46. Motel behind the tire place. West Side. Room 18. A rustle, a door, a man's voice somewhere behind Yoon, speaking quickly in Korean. Vincent Aldridge. Charlotte went still. Alive? Alive. Sitting on the bed with his shoes on. He has not resisted. Yoon's tone shifted, a half step, the way a careful man's does when the careful part is finished. The room was paid 3 weeks in advance. In cash. There is a passport in the drawer in the Incheon name, and there is a folder. Describe the folder. Employee schedule, this restaurant, 4 weeks, printed. Photographs of the loading dock door from the street, different days. A copy of the payroll page with one line highlighted. Yoon paused. And a photograph of a bill. Red stamp. $840. Charlotte's head came up. When? Junho said. The file date is the 14th. That's before, Charlotte said. Her voice had gone thin at the edges, and she brought it back down on purpose, the way she brought her hands down at the pass when Pruitt was shouting. That bill came to my mailbox on the 16th. I opened it standing in the vestibule. It was sealed. I know it was sealed. I broke the flap with my thumb. I remember because I ripped the corner off the notice. Then it was photographed somewhere before it reached you. Somebody opened my mail. Somebody read your life, Junho said, for 3 weeks, and then decided which page of it to use. Yoon. Charlotte leaned toward the phone on the bench. The schedule in that folder. Is it marked? A pause, while a man turned pages with gloves on. 2 names are circled, Yoon said. One in blue, one in red. Whose? Sonia Reyes, blue. Charlotte Rivera, red. Red was added later, she said. Different pen, different day. Blue was the plan, and red was the correction. That is my reading also. Charlotte sat back against the cold marble. Somewhere on the 4th floor of a building in Inwood, a man she would never meet was standing on a landing outside her door so her son could finish sleeping. And downtown, in a motel room off a highway, a folder with her name circled twice had been sitting in a drawer since before she had ever poured anyone water. Charlotte looked out at the rain on 52nd Street. 2 cars went by with their wipers on, and a man walked a small dog under an awning across the way, and the world was completely ordinary and completely indifferent, and she thought about the vestibule, the row of brass boxes, 4C, the little door that never quite latched. Yoon, Junho said. Nobody touches Aldridge. Nobody speaks to him. 2 men outside the door, one at the stairs. He sits in that room until I say. He'll ask for something. Give him water and take nothing away from him. I want the folder photographed where it lies, page by page, before a single sheet is moved. Understood. And Tae-sung. That is why I called. Yoon exhaled. He stopped 40 minutes ago. Service area, westbound, past the last exit. He parked at the far end away from the lights, and he has not left the car. Who arrived? Nobody. Junho's hands stopped on the cup. He received one message at 4:51, Yoon said. Nothing since. He has been sitting in a dark car in an empty lot for 40 minutes with the engine off, and there is no meeting, and I do not believe there was ever going to be a meeting. Charlotte spoke before she decided to. Then he's not there for anyone. He's there to be watched. Both men were quiet. Say that again, Junho said. He's bait. She turned her whole body toward the phone, elbows on her knees. Whoever's above him told him to drive out past the last exit and sit still in an empty lot at 5 in the morning. There's one reason to do that. You want to count the headlights that follow. Junho set his cup down on the marble. Yoon, pull everyone back to the highway, not the shoulder, back into traffic, past him, out of the lot entirely. If a man of mine is standing in that service area, he leaves now, and he does not leave fast. And the sedan, let it go home. He rubbed his thumb once across the scarred face of the small phone. We were told to look at Tae-sung so that we would show what we look with. She's right, it's a count. Nobody has crossed the lot, Yoon said. One car stopped for fuel and left. Our people were at the exit ramp, 300 meters back. Then whoever is counting got a very boring number, Charlotte said. Something moved in Junho's face, briefly, at the corner of the mouth. It was the second time all night. He gave the rest of it in short pieces, the way a man gives instructions he has already rehearsed against the ceiling. The signature card first. Yoon was to have a photograph of the check cashier's window camera for that Tuesday afternoon, 4:40 to 5, in hand before the branch opened. The courier log, the notary stamp, the 2 deposit slips, then Charlotte's time card for the same Tuesday, pulled from the building's payroll system, thumbprint and all, showing a woman clocked in on the 48th floor at 4:52 in the afternoon, while somebody was signing her name 4 blocks from her children. And then, Charlotte said, then all of it goes to a lawyer at 9 o'clock this morning, with your name on the first page, and she files it before anyone asks her a question. Files what? Nothing happened. Nobody died. That's the point. He said it quietly. A frame only works if it arrives first. If the story of the fraud is already sitting in a drawer with a date on it, then the $9,000 stops being your motive and becomes his mistake. You will be the woman who reported it, not the woman who explained it. I can't afford a lawyer. You are not hiring one. She works for a building I own. You will sit in a chair for 20 minutes and tell the truth about a Tuesday and sign nothing you have not read. He picked up his coat from the arm of the bench. If you want, take Loretta with you. Charlotte looked at him. Loretta doesn't know anything. I'm aware. She thinks I'm on overtime. She pressed her fingertips against her eyes, briefly. She's 63 years old, and she's sitting in my living room with the television on mute and 5 men in the building she doesn't know about, and she thinks somebody tried to break into the pharmacy. Then that is your decision to make, not mine. She took out her own phone. It rang 3 times. When Loretta picked up, the television was still going behind her, and her voice had the soft raggedness of a woman who had been awake with her eyes closed. Baby, you still there? I'm still here. Charlotte watched the rain. Miss Loretta, I need you to listen to me and not get up off that couch. All right? There was no break-in at the pharmacy. There was a pause exactly 1 breath long. Go on, Loretta said. Charlotte told her. Not all of it. Not the amber bottle, Not the 2 dead cameras, not a name in the middle of an order that had traveled through 6 cities. She told her that a man in the corner section had been the target of something, that Charlotte had noticed it and stopped it, that people were angry with her for stopping it, that a photograph of their hallway had come to her phone at 12:31, and that the men in the lobby and on the 4th floor landing were there because of her and would be there until it was finished. "That door of ours," Loretta said. 4C. "Yes, ma'am. Somebody stood in my hallway." "Yes." Loretta was quiet. Behind her, the television flickered without sound. "Micah asked for you at 11, she said finally. "I told him you were making the money. Was I lying?" "No." Charlotte's throat closed and she opened it. "Miss Loretta, there's one more thing and I've been carrying it since Thursday. There's a bill in my apron. The daycare. $840, due Monday, and if I don't pay it, they put both babies out on Tuesday morning." Charlotte Rivera. "I know. You have been sitting on that all week? I didn't want you offering me your $400. "Well, that is exactly what I'm about to do," Loretta said. "So you may as well get comfortable. Miss Loretta, I have $411, and Deacon Whitfield runs the Benevolence Fund out of a shoebox and has been begging somebody to let him use it since Easter." A creak, a woman shifting her weight off a bad knee. "And on Monday morning you are going to walk into that office with me, and we are going to ask that young woman at the desk for 2 weeks, and she is going to give them to us, because I have known her mother since the Clinton administration." Charlotte laughed, and this time it came out right, and she put her hand over her eyes. "That's not a loan," she said. "No, it surely is not. I'll pay it back." "Then pay it back," Loretta said. "That's what people do with each other. Now go on and finish whatever it is and come home and get in the bed." The call ended. Charlotte sat with the phone in her lap and the coffee cup empty beside her and the rain letting up on the glass. She did not look at Junho and he did not look at her, and after a while he said, without any weight on it at all, "You accepted it. From her." "Yes." He put his arms into the coat. "That was the whole difference. I only had to wait for the right person to offer." The scratched phone lit up on the bench between them. No history, no country code. 9 words this time. In English, the letters small and even. "The man who knocked twice is still knocking. Junho." He read it standing. He read it a second time. Charlotte watched his shoulders and learned nothing from them, and then he sat back down on the bench beside her, slowly, the way a man sits when he has just been made much older. "That's not about me," she said. "No. Incheon." "Yes." He held the phone in both hands with his forearms on his knees and looked at the dry fountain. "My sister called me 4 times at 6 in the morning," he said. "She wanted to ask about a man who had come to her door twice that week. I have never known what she was going to say about him, because by the time I stood in that hallway, there was nothing left to ask." He turned the phone over. 9 hours. I have measured a great many things against 9 hours since then. And whoever is sending these knows that. "Whoever is sending these was there," Junho said, "ahead of me. He is telling me that he has been in front of me for 11 years, and that he can put a woman I have known for 6 hours into a signature drawer any time he chooses. Then he's not sending it to threaten me. He's sending it to show me what he has always had." He stood. "Taesung is not a traitor. Taesung is a hand. Somebody has been reaching through him since before he knew he was being reached through, and now that the hand has failed, the arm is introducing itself." Charlotte stood too. Outside, the rain had thinned into that fine gray drift that means it will stop within the hour, and the sky over the buildings had gone the color of dishwater, which in her life had always meant she was late for something. 5:31, she said, looking at the clock over Ruben's desk. "There's a bus at 5:40. "There is a car. I know there's a car. She pulled her wet coat closed and worked one button. "And you're going to let me take the bus, because there are 2 men from Queens sitting on my street who are only useful if nobody ever sees a black sedan pull up in front of my building at 6 in the morning. Right?" Junho held the door. "Right," he said. They stood under the awning while the light came up on the wet pavement. He gave her 3 things in order, counting nothing on his fingers. 9 o'clock, the lawyer, the time card. She repeated them back in the flat voice she used for a table's allergies. "And Sunday," he said. "I'm sick. Terrible flu. Pruitt will put Sonia Reyes on the corner section and complain about it to a man in a coat." "Good." She looked down the block toward 9th. A bus was 3 lights away, lit up inside and nearly empty, and it was going to be on time for the first time in a week. "Thursday," she said. Junho turned his head. "You asked me a question in an elevator," Charlotte said, "and the doors closed on me before I finished answering it. So, Taekalm, Thursday, somewhere with paper napkins and a menu on the wall, because if a man is going to be difficult about a check, I want to see the price of it first." "Thursday," he said. The bus came. She got on it with her name tag still pinned over her left breast, and the red stamped notice folded flat in her apron pocket, and she found a seat on the sidewalk side and did not turn her head, and Kang Junho stood under the awning in the last of the rain and watched it pull away and did not move until it had cleared the corner. Then he took out the phone that no one but one man had the number for and typed 3 words and sent them. "Come knock again." If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever carried a final notice in your pocket and smiled at a stranger anyway? Tell me, my loves, would you have whispered the warning, knowing the danger becomes yours the second you open your mouth? And has protection ever arrived in your life looking exactly like a cage? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, loyalty, and betrayal, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.